Sports Spectacular, powered by IlliniGuys.com on the Illini Guys Radio Network. Appreciate you being with us here all over the state. Like we mentioned, we've got folks down in Northwest Indiana. Yeah, you guys are listening in on WLS in Chicago. Also up in Northwest Illinois, Quad Cities. We're down in Anna. We're in Morton. We're all over the place. We appreciate everyone joining in. Bloomington, WJBC, welcome as well. We talked a minute ago. We had this series ongoing now for the past 4+ years. Eye on the Illini. You can find it anywhere you get your podcast. And a great conversation that Cagley had with Greg Glass of fanstake.com about NIL and some things they're working on. Very interesting. Let's listen into a part of that, and we'll have some conversation on the other side.
If you want to go over a little bit about Fanstake and what it is and what you do to help the market come into college sports, I'd love to hear that.
Absolutely. I think that's the perfect place to start. So yeah, Fanstake is essentially a competitive recruiting platform for college athletics. And the way we think about it is the design and intention from the very beginning was, how can we potentially democratize the process for all these different schools out there? And the genesis for this, the original idea was, well, if you can actually get your fans to support the teams directly in a really low risk way, you could change the game. And so what we mean by that is you can go on Fanstake, and let's say you want to see your point guard return or your quarterback, whatever it might be. I can put $25 on them. And if they end up coming back to Illinois, it converts into an endorsement deal between Fanstake and that athlete, and it's funded primarily by the Illinois fan base. However, if they decide that they want to hit the portal and transfer somewhere else, and let's say they go play at Notre Dame, well, you as an Illinois fan get 100% of your money returned, and it's the Illinois fan base. It's the Notre Dame fan base that ultimately funds that endorsement deal. So the idea behind it stemmed really from a law that passed last year in Tennessee that essentially gives these athletes the ability to negotiate these deals in advance. And so the way to think about Fanstake is essentially just, it's a negotiation platform where an athlete can go in and understand what their opportunity is before making a decision. And for a lot of these guys, that's important. They need to understand, all right, how much NIL money can I potentially get if I play at one school versus another school? Now, that's not the only decision these kids are making. And I think that's one of the really interesting pieces of insight that we've learned over the past couple of years here is that, look, like any profession, there are multiple variables involved in terms of how a kid decides where they're going to play. It's playing time, coaching, location, facilities, staff, et cetera, who you're playing with. But money obviously is a part of it now. And so we're trying to allow all schools to compete in a way where, look, even if you don't have these big donors who are writing $1 million checks, you probably have a pretty passionate fan base, almost every school does, who can write small checks, and together you can actually have an impact.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool because you look at Illinois in the top 10 of alumni out across the United States. Certainly that would be something that would be a strength potentially for an Illini if you have a motivated fan base. And how does one of these movements get started then?
It really depends on the school. Really, we've got programs everywhere from Louisville to Montana State to Howard to Wisconsin that have a decent amount of stakes on the platform. Some of it is driven by athletes where they're actually telling their fans like, hey guys, this is a great place to support us, because they end up getting 95% of any kind of contribution where we just keep processing fees essentially. Okay. And so sometimes it's the athletes who are promoting it. Other times it's the fan bases coming together, where we saw University of Colorado, for example, a bunch of fans who were trying to get an athlete from the portal to come to Colorado, and they were sharing on social media. And so there's a certain virality to what we're doing that's kind of essential. And that's what we're hoping, is that if you can get 100,000 fans who chip in small dollar amounts, suddenly you're competitive with these big whales who are coming in, writing in these checks that they're not going to stop. And even in this new environment, which we'll talk a little bit more about, the donation money is still going to be critically important. In fact, it's really just kind of a reset in terms of the expectations for financial support, where it's going to get actually, unfortunately, probably more and more expensive to be competitive.
Yeah, and that certainly seems to be the route of everything these days. The one thing I would say is if you are trying to back a player, trying to make your move as a fan base or as an individual fan, the beautiful thing about this is if the guy goes or the gal goes somewhere else, you get your money returned to you. So there's really not there's not a risk in terms of that. I guess the only risk is, if you put down that $100, make sure you can afford it if
That's
that
right.
player comes to your school.
That's right. And we always say, look, for me, I don't put down anything that I'm not willing to pay for. It's the other way to think about it is like college basketball in particular is one of my favorite products on the planet. And I watch it religiously. I'm willing to pay, 50, $100, maybe $200 to have a better team.
Yep.
If I don't get the better team though, I want to I'm not just going to send a check to some unknown spot where it's opaque and you don't have a great understanding for where that money's going. If I can have a little influence, I could also put money on the players who I think will make a difference, put money on players primarily who I want to return rather than potentially going to the NBA or hitting the transfer portal. That's how I think about it. And FanStake is actually going to expand in more directions where even beyond money, we're going to allow you just to kind of engage in games and do other things that can support your team where there are going to be brands on the platform who are working with athletes and using their NIL. And as long as fans are engaged, you're helping your team. And so we're really trying to expand the opportunities for fans to participate and help their team win while their team's out there playing for them.
Yeah, that is so cool. So, folks, you can why don't you give them an idea of where they can find you if they want to do any research or that and
Absolutely.
learn about you.
Yeah, so just fanstake.com, FANSTAKE. Check it out. You can sign up right there and also just kind of explore the athletes and see what's happening on the platform if you just want to see what's going on there.
Perfect. So we talk about the changing environment. You obviously have the House settlement, and can you tell us, in layman's terms for fans, what the difference is between August 5th, 2025 and August 5th, 2024, if there is that much, and what your
Yeah.
perception of that is?
There is. And so look, first and foremost with the House settlement, and we'll talk about congressional action, executive orders, all of this, and what's in conflict. But the House settlement allows the schools to now share revenue directly with the athletes. There's a cap on the amount they can share. It's equivalent to about a little over $20 million every year. And that's across all sports, both genders, right? So one thing you need to understand, especially in a conference like the Big Ten, is that that is not enough money to actually be competitive. A school like Ohio State, for example, is spending 30 plus million on football alone. Forget all the other sports, forget basketball, and so on. And so, we're finding is that if you're a Power Four school, you are going to be north of this effective salary cap. And so it really is a soft cap that they're implementing. And the additional money is going to come from those traditional sources of donations. And can you get these third party independent NIL deals on top of it to remain competitive? Now, every school looks at this a little bit differently. If you're a big school like Illinois, you've got different priorities. I think Illinois, I actually think of historically as a big basketball program. In football, obviously, you want to be successful as well. Football is far more expensive across the board. Even the biggest basketball programs, and I actually happen to be a fan of Duke, don't hold that against me. But Duke basketball, who you would think is spending a lot of money, and they are, their football team still costs far more. And that's just the business dynamics of these sports. And so really it's a matter of like, how do you get, you're going to need in the power conferences north probably of 10 to 15 million in football and usually about 5 to 10 million in basketball. That's before you get into women's basketball. That's before you get into volleyball, baseball, everything else. And so that's really what it's going to look like. And the other part of this is that the NCAA, through the College Sports Commission, which is essentially just the Power Four's ruling body, is introducing this new clearinghouse, which is supposed to have oversight on what deal is fair to move forward with and what is not. And the rules around it are, if you're associated with a particular university, you can, so these collectives who are associated, you can only do deals at fair market value. And so they supposedly are going to be ruling on what is fair and what is not. Now, the challenge with that is that fair market value is a very subjective term. And if you look at it in terms of the legal definition, it's what a willing buyer is willing to pay to a willing seller. And so you're going to see probably a lot more lawsuits, unfortunately, as this plays out. Fanstake's in this unique position where we're unassociated. So we're not tied to a particular university. We're doing this by definition in a free market where all these different fan bases can compete. And the market dynamics are front and center and transparent. So we have a benefit there versus the traditional collective model.
Once again, Greg Glass, that's of fanstake.com. You can hear the entire interview on our podcast series, Eye on the Illini. You can download that anywhere that you get your podcast. Mike, great conversation there. Interesting, again, how different organizations and programs are working to try to find a way to make these dollars work and get these players dollars into the hands of student athletes.
Yeah, and he was talking about democratizing it a little bit, making the everyday fan have a voice in it, that if you got enough people from a grassroots level, you might be able to affect the recruiting of your team and be a positive influence. I thought that was pretty cool. And certainly he gave us a great overview of NIL. And we're getting really close to our 500th episode of Eye on the Illini, which will be coming up this month.
Wow.
That's 500 people that we're talking to Mike. Think about that.
That's more friends than I knew I had.
Talk about sacrifice.
Friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. The NIL Go, the contracts that these kids have signed, it's a very intriguing difference. Now, the weird part about it is some of the conferences have gone with these contracts. The SEC hasn't done that yet. So I think they're still in paying with the bags. But overall, you're trying to see a shift. People are, no matter what rules you put in place, no matter what program you put in place, people are going to try and find a way to circumvent those, whether legally or illegally. Some of them will be okay. Some of it won't be okay. But they're going to find a way to do this. They're going to try and get this done because at the end of the day, these are fanatics who want their programs to win. And so they're going to do whatever it takes to give them the best opportunity to win.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Brad, we're getting a couple months into this now. Are you hearing anything about a difference in the way kids are being recruited and the way these packages are being put together now with the new guidelines? Is it too soon yet, or are you hearing anything of any changes along those lines?
I think that there's been a shift in focus, especially in basketball. Like for Illinois, they were always, grabbing 6-7 guys in the portal or whatever. I think they're trying to be more high school focused like they used to be. It means they're still going to grab what they need in the portal at the end of the year and try and find those guys. But at the end of the day, you'd like to have a more stable roster moving forward. So that's what I've seen because, again, the COVID year's gone. So that's the first part. The second part is they have these NIL contracts that they're signing, the rev share contracts they're signing, where they're getting X number of dollars. And it seems like most of them are going like 70, 75, 20 or 70, 25, whatever it is. And then 5% for everybody else. So obviously most going to football, but then basketball getting the second most. Now, so once you split that up, now they got to fill in the NIL stuff outside of that. So there's going to be a baseline for all these kids. And so they're trying to fill it's almost like a salary cap to a certain extent. You're trying to fill the lower levels at this rate. And then they're going to have some guys they're going to have to pay bigger money in this rev share. And then they're going to try and find NIL deals to fill it out that meet the NIL Go requirements. And the SEC, they're just going to hand out bags of cash.
Yeah. And the funny thing is for a lot of these programs, it's going to mean guys who signed last year are going to do much better than the people who are coming in next year. So it's really strange, AJ, what's his name at BYU, or Underwood up at Michigan, the quarterback, they aren't going to get $9 million a year. So I think it's going to be a real change for these kids as well. And I want to see how that affects recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to affect it in some way. And like you said, like Brad was saying, how do you circumvent what's out there? Listen, where there's a will, there's a way. That's always been the case there. We're not too naive to think that's not the case. Okay, still more to come here on the Sports Spectacular. Keep it here.